Hello, welcome to this video for Escaping World War II, the board game, which is available from the Game Crafters website. So in this video what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some of the rules, and then we're going to play the game and probably 5 or 6 turns see the game in action and how all the rules gel together. If you haven't seen it already, we did a preview video of the game being unboxed, so you can see what to expect when it arrives from the Game Crafter. And we've done a follow-up video which was setting up the game ready for play, which is where we're at now. So what we're going to do is just going to have a look at the game and discuss the rules, but first a little bit of an insight into what the game's about. So the game starts off in World War II. The group of servicemen have got together and formulated an escape plan. They were currently prisoners of war in a prisoner of war camp, and they've now managed to break free from the camp, and they're now on the run trying to make their way across Europe into Paris, where they're going to hook up with the French Resistance and then head south with a freedom plan into Spain, where they can win the game, they can win their freedom, and they've escaped. The game will be tracked. Each turn this token moves around the track. At the end, during the course of a turn, this may also move extra spaces, and there's certain features and spaces to be aware of as it moves around the track, which we'll go into a bit more detail a bit later on when we play it. But basically, if it ever reaches this point, the servicemen have been captured and they've lost the game. And in addition, if this token here, the SS token, catches up with this progress token or passes it, then the servicemen have been caught and the game comes to an end. And another way that the game can come to an end is all of these servicemen were to actually die in their effort trying to escape. There's a few tokens that you're going to need, which are a very important part of the game. You're going to need to collect resistance group tokens. So these represent local resistance groups that are helping the servicemen as and when they come across them as they're crossing Europe. And to get across these borders here, we're going to need one of them to spend. So as you collect them, they get placed on there, and that represents a contact that you've made with a local resistance group. When they get to this stage, to cross it, they can spend one of those, they can use up one of their contacts, and that will get them through these controlled borders that are impenetrable until they can actually get help. The other way that they can get across them is if they've been breached. So at times during the game, you might get the opportunity to place a breached token across these spaces, and so when that happens, in effect these two spaces are linked. Whichever border it shares, whichever spaces the breach token is linking, the token can move freely across it, and they don't need to spend that resistance token. So other than that, they can move across all these other borders freely. You can't move diagonal, but you can move left, right, forward and backwards, and we'll show a turn, we'll show the movement during the actual gameplay when we start playing it. A few other spaces are to be aware of is if you move onto a space where there's one of the Nazi forces pawns, then that's going to have a detrimental effect to the escape. And likewise, if you move onto a space that's got one of these symbols on, that represents a Nazi forces base, there's going to be a detrimental effect. If you move onto a space of a prisoner of war camp, that again is going to be a negative for you. And if you move onto a city space, you're going to need to make a linguistics test, which we're going to test in a minute. Otherwise that's going to affect your escape as well, and all this will become apparent when we actually start playing. So there's a few spaces you need to be aware of. If you enter a space with one of these event tokens, you get to reveal it if it hasn't already been revealed, and then something will happen from that, and there's good and bad results from that happening as well. Other than that, you've got your escape plan and you've got your token pools at the top here. These are wounds, ammo cubes, water cubes, food cubes. This is your event pool, equipment, close combat, firearms, breach tokens, resistance tokens, and the freedom plan. So what we'll do is we'll have a look at the Servicemen, and we'll show you a bit more information about them. So there's the card is broken up into a few segments. There's a shoulder badge there, which represents the rank that they are, and it's also going to be a place where we're going to discard some determination cubes, so we'll look at that in a minute. You've got the name of the serviceman, the country they represent, and their rank, and you've got their number of skills. So we've got linguistics, close combat, firearms and determination, and then we've got a special ability. So each serviceman has a special ability. Philip Harper, this card here, he's got lucky, and it allows him to re-roll the d6 after rolling a random story. Choose which one to use. So we're going to how that will play out a bit later on when we actually start playing the game. When you make a test, in effect what you do is you take that value and you need to roll the serviceman's d6. So Philip Harper was on the red position, so we would roll Philip Harper's d6, and you would roll it, and if it was equal to or less than the number printed, then it would be a pass. If it was rolled above, it would be a fail. So in that instance we actually failed the test, and so Philip Harper's dice would be placed on the card to show that it was failed. If he passed the test, it would be placed back into the determination box. And the reason why we do that is because when we're making these rolls, for all of your surviving servicemen, we roll their dice, and you roll them all together, and then you apply the results. So let's say we was testing linguistics, we can see clearly that's a pass, that one's a pass, that one's a pass, but that one's a fail. And so we can see straight away that only one serviceman failed, but all three others passed, and that will become apparent. You need to be collecting that data to determine what's going to happen in the story, and we'll go into that when we actually start playing the game. But that way is a good way of tracking how your successes and your failures. Now the only thing you've got to bear in mind is when you're making a determination test, is the value that you're using is the number of cubes that you've got in this box. So at the start of the game, each serviceman, they began with the number of cubes that's written under their determination value. So in this particular case he had a determination of 3, so we placed 3 cubes in his determination box. As that serviceman loses for determination, then so this value is going down. So his determination is currently 2. If we was to restore that, it would go back up to 3. And so you need to be aware of that when you're testing, that you use the determination value based on the number of cubes that are in this determination box. Okay, when you discard determination, place it on the shoulder badge. It's a good area to store it in, and when they regain that determination, it gets placed back into the box. They can't have more determination in this box than what's written on the card, so these are all their maximum values that they can have. And when you're actually making any test, you can actually spend a determination cube to actually re-roll the die. So for instance, in this case here, we actually failed that result. He could actually spend a determination cube to re-roll that die, and so in that case we rolled a 1, which was quite lucky, so that's now become a success. If you're rolling determination and you failed your determination roll, let's say we've rolled a 4, that would be a failure, so we'd put that on there, and then we decided that we was going to spend a determination cube to re-roll that die. That would be placed there. We're now checking for 2, so you can see we would have to roll 2 or less on the die, so that would be another failure, so we could either keep going until we run out of determination. The same concept would apply if you're making a firearms test. So if you're testing the firearms skill and you've got some of these ammo cubes in your area here, you could actually use them in an identical way to these, except that you're just returning that back to the pool. So ammo gives you a chance to re-roll dice rolls during a firearms test. Okay, this box here at the bottom is called the survival track. There's 2. There's the food and the water, and each turn all the cubes move one space to their right. Any cubes that are in C are first discarded back to the reserve, and then all the other tokens move to the right, and you need to discard one food cube and one food cube and one water cube each turn, otherwise a serviceman is going to lose determination and you get to choose which serviceman. So it doesn't matter if the discard came from C, or after you've discarded all the tokens from C you can then discard them from anywhere else, but you must always discard two, a food and a water, or the servicemen aren't going to eat properly and one of them is going to suffer for each cube that isn't discarded. So we're going to that when we actually start playing as well. So other than that, I think it's pretty straightforward. We're going to the escape card when we actually start playing the game and how that works, and we'll learn the rest of the rules as we start playing the game. There's a number of tokens here. I'll just show you these and get a bit of a close up there. This is a close combat token. It can be used during a close combat test, and it will add +2 to a single serviceman's close combat skill. So if we decided to use it for, say, Serviceman Leighton Thomas, we'd place that there, and when we rolled the dice we know that he has got, for this roll he's got 5, 2, 3 plus 2 for the combat knife, and then once it's used it gets discarded back to its pool, shuffled in and discarded back to its pool. There are some tokens in here that have a red border around the close combat icon. So any of these tokens here that have a red background to them, that bonus applies to all of the servicemen. So all servicemen will gain +1 to their, in that instance, to their close combat skill. So you need to be aware of those as well when we're playing. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up the basics of the game, and so now what we'll do is we'll start actually playing a game. Okay, so what we're actually going to do now is we're going to actually start playing an actual game. Just before we start actually getting involved too much, is phase 1 is pass the command token around the board. So the game is for 1 to 4 players. If you're playing it solo you don't need to worry about passing this command token around, but any players 2 to 4 you're going to need to pass this around. Whoever is in possession of this when it's given to them at the start of the turn, they're in control of the game and all the components, but all the other players get to have their say. They get to discuss tactics with the command player, make suggestions, give advice and so forth, but ultimately the command player is the person who decides if they're going to follow that advice, and they are the only ones that are going to be able to move the pieces, touch the board and interact with the rulebook and the Story of Escapes book. So because we're playing this solo as a demonstration video, we won't be dealing with the command token, so each turn we're going to just go through the phases 2 through to 5C and deal with each step as we go. So the first thing for us is we're going to do the survival phase. So unless you're on a city space, what you need to do is any food or water that's in position C get returned back to the pool, and then everything in B moves to C and everything in A moves to B. So at the start of the game we've only got tokens in A, so we're going to slide everything from A to B. And now we need to decide if we want to discard any food or water. Now you need to discard 1 food and 1 water per turn, otherwise the servicemen are not going to eat properly and their determination is going to drop. And for each token that we do not discard, the servicemen are going to have to discard 1 determination cube. So if we didn't discard any at this point, I'd have to choose 2 servicemen or 1 serviceman to discard 2 determination cubes. So in this instant what we're going to do is we're going to discard food and water so that we don't need to meet that loss. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we move on to the escape track. So we move that one space along there. When we move across these spaces, we're going to what they entail, but for now we'll just move that one space. And then it's the journey or rest phase, so we need to move this serviceman one space. Either we can go either there or there. I think I'm going to move there because the next part of the game this token's going to move, and I know that there's no way that he can move into that space, so that is a safe place to actually move my position to. Okay, and then the next thing is the escape card. We turn that over and it shows us a red square, so that tells us that all the pawns, all the Nazi forces that are in the region that the serviceman pawn is in are going to move across their red borders. So in this instance it's going to move across that border to there. As an example, if we was in this region, if our pawn was say here, then all of the pawns in this would move across their red borders and none of the other pawns will move, just the ones that are in the serviceman's area. So that's how the movement works. And then we do a foraging check. So this is where we're going to make a test. It's determination +0. So we roll all the serviceman's dice and then we apply the results to the serviceman's determination box or their card. So we can see that those results, 3 or less, 1, 6 or less, over, 3 or less, 3 or less. So those are all the passes, that's the failure. And if half or more are successful of the servicemen, then we get to add the cubes that are shown on that card to our survival box, which in this case is survival box is water, so we've added 2 water, and that's the foraging test done. And then the next thing to do is to check the story of escapes. So we look up this result on the card. I'll just show you a bit closer up. There's a list of results from 1 to 10 which correspond to the regions that are on the board as well. So for instance, we're in Yugoslavia, which is number 4, so we look up result 4. It's also purple, and the colour purple is represented on the card, so you can see instantly which result you're meant to be looking up, and it tells us result I. So then what we do is we look up I in the Story of Escapes book. Had we been in a city, we would use this result here, regardless of what region we was in. If we was in any of the city spaces, we would use the result at the bottom that hasn't got a number, it's just got a picture of the city icon, and it would tell us to look up result S. That result there, you'll be instructed when you need to look up that result when it comes up in the game, and we might very well do that during this playthrough. So for now we need to look up I. So we look up I in the escape book, and it tells us intelligence. The servicemen discover some intel that helps them with the escape. It's a random story. Roll 1d6 and consult the result below to determine what they discover. So one of the things that we should have done at the beginning of the game, which we'll do now, is to just check out all of our servicemen's special abilities to see how they impact the game and what we can do with them. So we'll put that on pause for now and we'll just have a look at these. So Philip Harper, he's lucky. He can re-roll the d6 after rolling a random story. Choose which to use. So that'll come in handy with this. So what we can do is we can roll the random story. If we don't like the result, we can use his special ability, and then we can re-roll, and then we can choose which one we want. Finley George says he's a forager. Move this one space and add one food or 1 water cube to survival box A. So that's a way of getting extra food, but at the cost of time. So got to be a bit wary about using that. Rally. Leighton Thomas has rally. Re-roll any serviceman's failed determination test, and so we can use that once per turn. That might come in handy. And Francisek Kobach, we call him Kobach from now on. He is a fast thinker. We can re-roll any serviceman's failed test whilst reading E, G or S, and that's referring to the results that are in this book here. So that might come in handy at some point. So for now, the only one that would be able to help us is Philip Harper. So I'm going to roll a random story under the intelligence, and we've got 4. So it says, the servicemen managed to spy and misform the Nazis of their escape, move any Nazi forces to any space within its coloured area. Okay, so that's not a bad one. We could move any of these to an area. So if we thought we was heading our way across here, for instance, we could move this one, say up here, well out of the way, to clear a path to get through. I'll re-roll it using his special ability to see, using his special skill to see what else we get. 2. The servicemen may find the location of something important. Oh, the servicemen find out the location of something important. Flip any event over. Okay, well I was heading towards this space here to see what that was. Let's flip that one over and I'll use that result to see what it is. Okay, so it's an ammo drop. So that token there tells me that if I go to that space and pick it up, I get to add an ammo cube to the escape plan, which could come in handy during a firearms test. So that's still not a bad one to go for. Okay, so regardless of that, that ends the turn and we're ready for turn 2. Okay, so we do our survival with everything. Normally you discard everything from C, haven't got anything, move everything along to the right, and then we do the escape track, move that one place, then we decide whether we're going to journey or rest. We're going to move across there. We know that the movement pattern of that is you can't get across there to us, so we're pretty safe there, and I think I'm going to head over in this direction anyway for the ammo. We done that one, so now let's see which way they move. Alright, so he's chasing us, so we move across the green triangle. Now we do our foraging test, which is our determination, and Leighton Thomas, if he needs to, he can rally us and spur us all on with his special ability. So I've got 5, that's a fail, 4 pass, 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 so more than half of pass, so we get to add 2 blue and 1 green, 1 food to our escape survival box, and then we need to look up the result, which says F. So we look up F. Freedom fighters. The servicemen are overjoyed when they come across a group of local freedom fighters. Test all the servicemen's linguistics +0. If half the number of tests succeed rounding up, the freedom fighters agree to help. Add 1 resistance to the escape plan, otherwise move the escape progress 1 space along the track. So this is quite important because we're going to need their help to get across this border, so we really do want to try and succeed at this. Let's see what happens. So that's a pass, that's clearly a fail, that one's just scraped through with a pass, and that one's a fail. So if half the number rounding up a success, they agree to help us. So we've made a contact with a local freedom fighting group and we've secured them, so that's quite a good move. Okay, so now it's time for a new turn. So let's do the survival bit. So everything in C gets discarded and then everything slides across. And now the escape track. So we're moving on to our first special space there, which shows the SS token. So when we move on to that space, the SS follows in our wake and we move that 1 space along. So there's a few of them on the board, which represents as we're trying to escape, the more time we're spending escaping, the more they're following us along. So now we've got to journey or rest. So we're going to head, we've got 1 food left, we've got plenty of water, we've not got much food, so we could really do with going to a city and seeing if we can get some food in the city. When we're in the city, we're not going to be performing the survival, so we're not going to be discarding any of these. So let's go to the city space, I think. So we're in the city, and we need to make a linguistics test. So we do that. Because we've ended our turn on a city space, we need to test and see how they fare amongst the population. So we can see these have failed. Right, so if half or more fail, we would need to move this one space along the track. We can see that half or more, rounding up, have failed, so we do need to move that one space along the track, unless we can change one of the results into a success. So perhaps Leighton Thomas, who slipped up, perhaps we could get him to talk a bit more and get it right the next time. So let's try him. So we're going to spend a determination to re-roll this dice roll. We've got a 2, so that's quite good. So that means that we don't need to move this token. We've managed to blend in a little bit. Okay, so that's that bit done. And now we move on to the escape card. So we see what we got. So he's moving straight away. You move the Nazi forces, they're moving towards us, and the foraging is for water only. We've got plenty of water, we didn't really need that, but we're still going to make our foraging test. Oops. See what we do. Fail, 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 and a pass. So in that instance, I'm not tempted to spend any determination to try and change that into a success, because I'm not really desperate for water. So we'll leave that as a fail, and we now look at this result here. Because we're in a city, we now refer to the city result. So O, we need to look up O, which I think is opportunity, and it tells us the servicemen have managed to secure something of interest. Random story. Roll 1d6 and consult the result below to determine what they discover. So again, we can use Philip Harper's ability there because it's a random story. So we've rolled 2, so we could get to add 1 water. So again, like I said, we didn't really need much water. So let's roll again and see what we get. 6. Add 1 equipment. That's a bit better. So you draw the top equipment from this slot, and we've managed to secure a jeep, which tells us we can move the serviceman 1 extra space during the journey phase. So that would be quite handy. Okay, so somewhere along the escape plan, it could be, we could use it over here, and what that means is that we've managed to secure a jeep. When we get to this point, we could use it, or we can use it anywhere, but for the sake of a story, it could be anywhere, but wherever we choose to use it is where we've arranged for it to be placed, and then we can just jump in the jeep and be able to move 2 spaces in 1 turn. So that's quite a handy thing to have found, and that concludes turn 3. So we begin a new turn, and we do the survival step. We can skip because we're in a city space. Now we do the escape track, move that 1 space along, and we do the journey or rest phase. We're going to go ahead and just move 1 space to here. We're not going to use the jeep, and this basically means we gain a ammo cube, and this gets shuffled back into the pool. So just mix them up, and that until you don't know where it is anymore, and place that back. Okay, and then the next thing is to draw an escape card, and he's moved back away from us, and that's a bit better. We could do with some food, so we'll re-roll for foraging. We've got a fail, 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 and a fail, so not very good at all there. So I don't think I'm going to I could always use Leighton Thomas's special ability Rally, reroll any serviceman's failed test, but I still need to get another one to pass their tests, so I'm not going to worry with that at the moment. I'm just going to accept the fact that we're not going to find any food for this turn. Okay, and then we're in purple, so it's not, 4 is the authorities. So the authorities alerted to the serviceman's location and gained valuable intel. Move the SS pawn 1 space along the escape track. So they've gained a bit towards us, and we're ready to start a new turn. So the survival we need to perform this time, so we need to discard both water, we need to slide them along 1, and we also need to discard 1 food, or 1 serviceman is going to suffer a determination loss. So I think we will discard that food, and that way we don't need to suffer any determination loss. Now we're going to move this 1 space along. Now this icon here tells us that if there was any breached border tokens on the board, they would be discarded. The Nazis would have restored the border that had been breached, they would have repaired it, and that breached token is then removed from the board. Okay, but as there wasn't, nothing else happens. And now we've got the journey phase. I'm going to go ahead and use my Jeep, and we're going to move 2 spaces, and I think we're going to go 1, 2, and to cross that border we're going to use the resistance that we had before, that the freedom fighters that we hooked up with. They're going to help us across the border, so that gets returned, and we're going to return this back to the equipment pool, shuffling that in somewhere. And we get to see what this is. So, oh dear. So that one is telling us that we've come across some sort of Nazi enemy, and we need to look up that result in the Story of Escapes books and deal with it. So using the escape card, look up that symbol there in the Story of Escapes book. So it tells us we've got to look up E, which is enemy, and it says move the SS 1 space 1 pawn along the escape track. Nazi soldiers have discovered the servicemen and converged on their location. Choose to test either all of the servicemen's close combat +1 or all of the servicemen's firearms +1. Each serviceman that is successful receives 1 determination unless they spent determination. Each serviceman that is unsuccessful receives 1 wound. If all servicemen are successful, they have gained something useful. If half the number of tests rounding up are unsuccessful, they have been captured. Go to C. So being captured is quite bad, so we don't really want to get captured. So first of all, we'll put that nasty token back into its pool. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to decide what we're going to test. So looking at their statistics, I can see that the majority of them are quite a bit better at close combat. So that one's got 4 in close combat, 4, 3, 3. In firearms, 3, 3, 4 and 2. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think I'm edging towards making a close combat test. We've also got the combat knife for any that are quite low. So I think because Kobach has only got 2 determination, I think I'll give him +2 to his close combat. He's got some determination that we could spend if we fail that result, and the others have got 4, so we'll go with that. Also, I've just noticed Kobach is a fast thinker, so we can re-roll any serviceman's failed test while reading E, G or S. Well, this is E, So we can re-roll one serviceman's failed test should they fail. So we've set ourselves up quite well to beat this. Let's see how we get on. So we're now in a punch up with the enemy. That is so it was close combat +1. So his close combat was 3, +2 is 5, +1 is 6. So that's a pass. Close combat of 5, that's a pass. 3 + 1, that's a fail. And 4 + 1, that's a pass. So only one's failed. We're going to use Kobak's special ability. He's a fast thinker. Perhaps he helps out, jumps in the way of the blows, and manages to overpower one of the Germans, one of the Nazis. So let's see how Leighton Thomas does on his re-roll. Okay, so he passes. So he's managed to successfully scafe the attack, and let's see what happens. We mix that. Now that token's been used up, that goes back in the pool, and it says if all servicemen are successful, they have gained something useful. And it also says that if they're successful and they didn't spend a determination, which Leighton Thomas didn't do, we get to restore one of their determination. So we get that determination back. So the effort in the fight actually spurred that serviceman on. He actually became more determined because they scored a small victory there. And we now need to, because they was all successful, we go to O. So we go to an opportunity. And it tells us the servicemen have managed to secure something of interest. Random story. So again, we can use Leighton's ability there. Let's see what we get. 2. We get to add 1 water. So I think I'll re-roll using his special ability. We got 4, which is add 1 close combat to the inventory. So we add 1 of them. And we found a bayonet +3. So during the fight, perhaps one of the servicemen snatched the Nazi's bayonet from his firearm and scarpered with it. So, and that concluded our journey and rest phase, where we headed across there. So now we need to do our escape card. So let's flip that over, and now we're in a different area. So all of these Nazis now move on the green arrow, the green triangle, but because they can't move, because there isn't a green one, we work in the order of red, yellow, green. So they're going to actually move across into all the green, across all the red areas, because that's the first one in that order. Red, yellow, green. So they move across there. Yes, so if the red pawn is moved into the same space as the escaping serviceman pawn, the compartment player moves the SS 1 space on the escape track. So we have to move that 1 space towards us. So I'm now in a position where we're nothing to salvage there, nothing to forage there. I now need to think about, we're in area 5, which is brown, which is T. We're not on a city, so we need to look up result T. But I'm thinking of next go, I might use the forager ability, move that 1 space along and add 1 food or 1 water to survival box A. So I'm going to do that, use his special ability and put that on there for next turn. So next turn we're going to have food to discard, so we don't need to discard any determination. Okay, so now we're on to T. So we look up T in the book. Terrors of the Nazi regime. The servicemen are subject to the horrors of the Nazi regime and forced to stand by powerless as the horror unfolds. Random story. Roll 1d6 and consult the result below to determine what they witness. So again, this is a random story. We can change that with Philip Harper's special ability. So let's see what happens. 3. Okay, workers have been chained together and are being marched to a slave labour camp. They suffer from malnutrition and look like walking corpses. When one stumbles and falls, unable to continue, a Nazi soldier unshackles him from the others and shoots him. Test all the servicemen's determination +0. Each serviceman that is unsuccessful loses 1 determination. So, let's see what the other result would be using his ability. Okay, so number 6, hundreds of defenceless civilians are being lined up and shot by a large unit of Eastern Commanders, a mobile killing division and subdivision of the Eastern Gruppen. I can't pronounce these for the life of me, so I do apologise. Test all the servicemen's determination -1. Each serviceman that is unsuccessful loses determination. So it's either 3 or 6. I think 3 gives us the best possible chance of passing, so we'll go with result 3. And so although Philip Harper was using his lucky ability, it still wasn't lucky enough for him to avoid witnessing these slave labourers workers. So let's see what happens. So it's determination +0. That's a pass, 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 and a fail. And it says each serviceman that is unsuccessful loses 1 determination. So old lucky Harper wasn't so lucky after all. Perhaps he got an eyeful of too much that he didn't want to see, and he lost a bit of his will to carry on. So that's the end of that go, and we'll play through one more turn just to demonstrate a bit more of the rules, and then we do a bit of a recap on some of the rules we haven't seen as well. So one more pass is the survival. We secured those, they get discarded. That would move along 1 space, but we're going to discard that anyway, so we don't need to lose any more determination. I could have used Leighton Thomas's, recapping from last turn, I could have used Leighton Thomas's special ability to reroll any serviceman's failed determination test, which would have saved losing that, but I'll leave it as is for now. So let's have a look. That's the survival bit. Then we need to move that across 1 space. Again, we've moved on an SS token, so we move down 1 space with the SS token. Now journey or rest, we want to move away from this token really, and so I think our safest option, probably not our best route, I would have liked to have checked out what that is, although it's a bit out of the way. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to head into Austria, because if I move there or there, the Nazi forces can follow me, and I want to put a bit of distance between those two. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to move into Austria and Hungary, and there's no way that the Nazis in Austria can reach these spaces. These are in fact ultimately safe from these guys, these 2 spaces. Okay, and now it's the escape card, so let's flip that over. They still move, he has to move to green, and there's nothing to salvage, nothing to forage in that space. And again we encounter the authorities, so you look up A, and we need to move that 1 space along the track towards us. So although we're doing quite well in our escape, we've managed to go from here all the way through Yugoslavia into Italy briefly, and then up into Austria. We are actually doing quite well in the escape. We've run out of food, we've secured some ammo, a bayonet and some civilian clothes we've still got that we have yet to use. We haven't lost much determination. We're in good stead to reach across into Paris, but we still need to hook up with at least 3 resistance fighters, to get the freedom plan. We need 1 to get across the border, 2 to hook up with the French Resistance and get their freedom plan, and then we've still got to make it all the way down here to Spain. So there's still quite a way to go. One of the rules that we never come across while we've been playing is when we move across this space here with the track, basically any of the event tokens that have been removed from the board there are then drawn from the counter pool and placed back on the board face down, and that's pretty much it. So when you get to the point of playing from the Story of Escapes book, just follow the instructions in the book and of each detail, and you're good to go. So thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed this video. I'll put all the links that you need in the description, and until next time, take care. Bye for now.